So the theory that I'm going to present today came to the forefront with the prologue to the Stormlight Archive 5. So if you haven't read 1 through 4, obviously this is going to be a massive spoiler, so don't be here, right? Well, you're welcome to watch, but it's going to ruin things, right? And it just seems so plausible that I have to address it. I'm certainly not the only person with this theory out there, but I do want to go through it in detail so it can make sense and we can see the supports to this theory that have been laid throughout the Stormlight Archive. So the theory stems from a single line in the prologue, very soon into the prologue. Chanarach, he said, was a soldier. I believe it. This is a soldier's blade, solid and straight, but with that little impossibility missing from the center. I should like to have seen her in battle. Lore often claims she has flaming red hair. Is that true? Okay, so the first thing about this is that the red hair is like so out of context. Like, why is Gavilar mentioning this? And the answer is because it's a clue.
Yep, juice.
So we haven't really learned much about Chanarach. We basically know she is a herald, she was a warrior, and she had really red hair. So our primary association with red hair on Roshar is Shallan, a number 1. So probably a connection there. That's what we're going to be talking about. And then Rock and the Horn Eaters, of course. So where did Shallan get her red hair? From her parents, because that's how genes work. We know a little bit about Shallan's father, but what do we know about Shallan's mother? Well, we basically know that she tried to kill Shallan as a child, so she's probably crazy. Crazy. That doesn't sound a bit like a herald, does it? And we know that she has really red hair. Words of Radiance, chapter 88. The one face down in the beautiful dress of blue and gold, red hair spilled out in a pattern around the head. Right, that's when Shallan is revisioning her death of her mother. And again, another visit to those memories in Rhythm of War, chapter 93. Her mother with stark red hair. Okay, crazy? Check. Red hair? Check. We don't know about the soldier part, but we could see that. So the theory is obviously that Chanarach the Herald is Shallan's mother, and I love it. I love it for so many reasons, and it makes so much sense. Let's look at the supports for this. First is the hair that we've already discussed. Where could Chanarach go to hide and fit in if she has flaming or stark red hair, right? And those two words, really close. They're adding that adjective to the hair, right? Anywho, it's Yakaved. That's where she can hide. So that's where Chanarach would hide if she was living, because it's where she can blend in, or the Horneater Peaks. And so finding her in Yakaved would be no surprise. And also other heralds seem to gravitate toward the people that are more like them, or that are their descendants, whether that's literally or culturally, such as Jezrien being in Alethkar or Ishar being in Shinovar. Second support to this is Mraize's reaction when he first finds out about Shallan's true identity, rather than her being Veil. So in Words of Radiance, chapter 88, he's in her room, right, waiting for her. I should have guessed that you would turn out to be Shallan Davar, Mraize continued. I feel a fool for not seeing it earlier. Your family has a long history of involvement in these events. Okay, so like why that line didn't stand out to me massive when I first read it, right? But it does now, right? A long history? How long? Like millennia? We don't really know anything about Shallan's grandparents or other heritage, so who is Mraize talking about here? If Shallan's mother is a herald and Mraize knows it, then these pieces all make sense. The events are the Oath Pact and the battle between Man and Singer, and she has long been a part of it. Another support is Shallan's mom's contact with the Skybreakers. Like, why is this housewife mom contacting Skybreakers? If she's a herald, it suddenly makes way more sense. She knew Nail personally. Kalek has shown us several times that the heralds went to Nail for problems and trusted him, probably second to Ishar. So in Oathbringer 40, we get that letter from Mraize when Shallan learns a little bit more about her. It says, your mother had intimate contact with a Skybreaker acolyte, and you know the result of that relationship. Helloran was recruited and entrusted into their ranks, like really fast. because Nail was impressed. Trust in him could be seeing some of the attributes that he knew in a younger Chanarach, right? Or some nepotism going on there. Okay, another support that we have, two tiny tidbits that line up really well if Chanarach is Shallan's mother. So during Middlefest, back in Yakaved, when Shallan was younger, she has this little episode where she thinks of her mother and she freezes up, and then she's like stands there for who knows how long. And hearing this dialogue, it says, "What would it be like to be brave like Helleran, as her mother had been, her mother?" So Shallan brings up that word brave in description of her mother. Well, let me show you this chart, and maybe I'm stretching a little bit here, but take a look. Here's the 10 essences and their numbers and the heralds associated with them. Look at the number 3. Yes, that's the number for Chanarach, right? And if you look over at the far right column, the divine attributes, the primary one for Chanarach was brave. Then the next one, obedient. This is an Ars Arcanum at the end of each book, and each one obviously associated with the herald, right? Even if the obedient makes perfect sense, if she really was going to kill Shallan, her own daughter, because it's what Nail and supposedly Ishar thought was best, that's quite some obedience, right? Also a little crazy. My last evidence really doesn't prove anything. It just fits so well to me, and it's interesting, so I'm going to include it. Palindromes and symmetry are something that Brandon likes, and that he's made important on Roshar. So palindromes, as a reminder, are words that are spelled the same forward and backwards. So in Way of Kings, chapter 33, so back to the first book, right? Shallan is having a conversation with the Ghostblood Capsule on cymatics and symmetry. And Capsule says this about Shallan's name. "Even our names, yours is nearly perfect, Shallan. One letter off, an ideal name for a light-eyed woman. Not too holy, but ever so close." Okay, so this line fascinates me when viewing it with the assumption that the Ghostbloods know who Shallan's mother is, right? That she's a herald. Shallan is not too holy, but close. That's dripping with double entendre, right? She's not a herald, which is holy in that land, but close to one, right? The phrase also tells me that they view this symmetry mostly visually, because he says her name is only one letter off, and H is not an N, but visually they're very close when they're lowercase. So this brings us to the Devar children. Helleran, Balat, Jushu, Wakim, Shallan. All of them have these slant palindromes in their names, right? Helleran has the EL interrupting his. Balat's B and T aren't perfect, but obviously the ALA, right? Ushu is pushed off of perfection from the J. Wakim's is super cool to me with that W and M. Wow, Mom. And then there's Shallan's, right? Which we've already discussed. Chanarach name is also a slant palindrome, being thrown off by the RA. This would be an interesting way of passing her heritage through her children's names, right? In Yakaved, she can't give her children her last name, but a little bit of her culture still made it in through their names, because all of her children's names are slant rhymes, just like hers is. Okay, so there's some strong evidence here that Shallan's mother is actually the Herald Chanarach. But why is the clue placed here in this chapter? He could have slipped this information about Chanarach in any number of places. So why here? Because it's a clue.
What was that? I couldn't hear you.
A clue! A clue!
And it has relevance to this chapter and what's going on here. If you haven't watched my other video on the prologue, please do that before going any further to talk about some of the views that I expressed in that video. So later in the prologue, Stormfaker, aka Ishar, in my opinion, feels the death of a herald. A herald has died. No, I'm not ready. The Oath Pact. No, they mustn't see. They mustn't know. So in the prologue, Stormlight Archive 5, a herald has died. We have Shalash, Taln, Kalek, Nalan, Ishar, and Jezrien accounted for. So the herald that died had to be Vatar, Palia, Bedel, or Chanarach. Which one of these 4 has been mentioned and made relevant in this chapter? Ding, 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 we have a winner. There's one. It's Chanarach. it's very logical to assume that Chanarach is the herald that died the same night Gavilar was assassinated. Of course, Brandon could just be like, pulling a fast one on us. But it's very logical to assume that that's why Chanarach is being brought up in this chapter. So for this theory to be true, Shallan's mother would need to be dead. Oh, wait. So let's see how the timelines match up. Words of Radiance, chapter 10, tells us that Shallan is 11 years old when she killed her mother. The first 2 chapters of Way of Kings then gives us a timeline from Gavilar's death. At the beginning of chapter 1 of Way of Kings, we get a 5 years later. And then at the beginning of chapter 2, we get an 8 months later. So 6 years has essentially passed by the time we get to chapter 3 of Way of Kings, where we meet Shallan. For this theory to work, Shallan would need to be 17 years old, so 6 years older than 11. Lo and behold, she tells us her age, 17, in that same conversation with Capsule in chapter 33, which I don't find coincidental. The timing matches up perfectly, 6 years. And how would it be to be Brandon, like writing all of these things in the Way of Kings, being like, you think you like this book now? Okay, Brandon sounds nothing like that. So there are 2 implications of this that I absolutely love. So number 1, if another herald died, they were sent back to Braze. The desolations were starting to happen every few years because heralds were breaking quicker, right? And we know that Talon shows up at the end of Way of Kings, so approximately 6-7 years after the death of Gavilar. So that would be how long that herald lasted. So it stands to reason that Talon didn't break. Talon never broke. Chanarach did. I don't know why I love this so much, but just thinking, pondering a person who held true to the end, holding up and holding back all of the terrors and horrors against everyone else. It's absolutely beautiful.
To be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause.
I also wonder if this is part of the stir-up that happened with the Shin and the backstory of Seth that we'll read in this next book. Because if Chanarach died, I assume her blade would disappear. A blade that was in the care of the Shin. This could have been why Seth suspected another desolation and was rejected by his people. Or it could have also been surrounding the craziness that made the Shin accept an unmade into their land, right? So that blade disappearing could cause a whole bunch of drama in Shinovar. The second implication of this is that I just love is the chance for Shallan to feel some forgiveness. She had like the roughest go ever in childhood. And I can just visualize this beautiful moment in which Shallan is reunited with her mother and she can feel part of that weight lifted off of her. I just screams amazing moment. Like the girl who stood up, right? Like that was gorgeous. And this could have a very similar vibe or character arc for Shallan. Anywho, that's all for today. Thank you guys so much. Let me know what you think down in the comments and I'll catch you guys later.